morning, everyone. I'm going to give everyone a few more moments to get logged on. Okay, good morning and welcome to our June workshop in our Demystifying Government Contracting series. Today's workshop will cover proposal types. My name is Catherine Walsh and I am with the NBDC PTAC program and I will be your moderator today. PTAC is part of the Nebraska Business Development Center. We are a statewide program and the government contracting services we offer include assistance with registrations and the new beta.sam.gov, assistance with 8A, HubZone, women-owned, veteran-owned small business certifications and self-certifications, proposal and bid review, and assistance with post-award processes such as debriefs, contract compliance, and invoice submission. NBDC has moved to all virtual events for the remainder of the summer. We have moved all of our events to virtual format and have even included some new events for you. So if you haven't looked at our events page in a while, please visit it. The link to that page is on your screen right now. Some of our upcoming events include on July 7th, we have a workshop with the Small Business Administration on the 8A program certification. On July 15th, we have an agency spotlight with the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Procurement Services. This event will consist of presentations from the procurement directors at UNL and UNK, and then will be followed by one-on-one meetings with reps from the UNL purchasing team. Spots are limited for those one-on-one meetings, so if you are interested, please sign up ASAP. On July 17th, we have a Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification Level 1 training with Project Spectrum. So for our full list of events and to register for the events I just mentioned, please visit ptac.unomaha.edu/events. You can also always shoot me an email after this webinar at cwalsh, WALSH@unomaha.edu. Okay, so let's get started with today's webinar. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please type them into the question box and we'll have time at the end to address everyone's questions. The PowerPoint slides for this webinar can be found in the Handouts tab on your control panel and you can download them from there. Our webinar today is presented by Sandy Burns, President and CEO of Project Solutions. Her company provides engineering, construction management, wastewater treatment operations, and business consulting services to local, state, and federal agencies. So welcome, Sandy, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Catherine. And welcome everyone to Demystifying Government Contracting Proposal Types. Just a little bit about myself. I am the founder and CEO of Project Solutions and have been in business for 20 years. My background is in engineering, and I have been bidding and working on government contracts all of my adult life. So I have quite a bit of experience. I think I probably have done everything that you could wrong so I could learn how to do it right. And so I'm coming from that perspective today. I'm coming from the perspective of a government contractor and not of a contracting officer or another government official. So it is from my point of view and from my experience. And I hope from that then you can learn a few of the things that I've learned along the way. Our learning objectives for today. I want to help You, small businesses, decipher the type of solicitations and contracts used by the federal government, decode the government solicitations with winning proposals, and solve the bid equation with strategies to win more bids. First off, I want to talk a little bit about getting ready to do business with the government. The government can seem very mysterious or confusing, but what it really is a lot of compliance. It's a lot of paperwork. So to get started with deciphering what they're talking about and all of that and being ready to bid to them, you first have to have some registrations. We'll talk about capability statements, searching bid sites, the GSA schedules, and bid matching services. So registrations and codes, you may already know this, you may already be registered, but just in case, I did want to cover this because it's so important. You must have a DUNS number. That is going to be changing in the future. There's another vendor that's going to take over for that DUNS number, but it has not happened yet. So watch for that. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to be called or where you go and get that yet, but right now it's still a DUNS number. And then your NAICS code. It identifies your products and services, and it's very important to identify which NAICS codes you can use. When you register, you have a main NAICS code that identifies your main services, and then you can identify up to about 20 more, 19 to 20 more that you can put in there as well into the SAM.gov. So the NAICS code is your North American Industry code for services, I think is what it stands for. So it's just to identify what your main type of work is. And then you have SAM.gov. And SAM.gov is where you must be registered to do any business with the government. And you have to be in the system before you can win a contract. So very important that you have your DUNS number and NAICS code ready, and then get into SAM.gov. If you have any trouble understanding how to do that or where to go and do that, or understanding the process, Catherine at PTAC or anybody else at the PTAC office would be able to help you do that. When you're in SAM.gov, you should be able to then get your CAGE code, and that CAGE code is important because that's how you invoice to the government. So you're going to need that code once you get into the system and get a project or a proposal one and be able to invoice your services. And then getting set asides. Catherine did mention that there's some presentation coming up about the SBA 8A program. That's for disadvantaged businesses, minority, and sometimes women-owned businesses can get into that program. But if you are a woman-owned small business or an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, or a small disadvantaged business, a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, a veteran-owned small business, or if you can qualify to get into the 8A program or the hub zone, which is the historically underutilized business zone, getting those certifications can make a big difference when you're bidding to the government. One of the things I was able to do early on was get into the 8A program. And I'm not a minority, but I am woman-owned. And a way the woman gets into this program is to be able to prove discrimination. So if you can prove discrimination, you can get into the program. If you're a minority, I would highly suggest you get into the 8A program. It's a 9-year program, and it will make a big difference in your company because they can set aside contracts for you. So that's very, very important that you can get into that. They can set aside for women-owned businesses and veteran-owned businesses and hub zone, but you don't see it as much. So that 8A program can be a real boost to your business. When you want to market to the government, the way that you do this is hopefully in the future we'll be able to go to procurement events and you'll be able to hand them your one-page capabilities statement. This is very important. You can also mail this to them, of course, and I would suggest you do that at this point. But this one-page capability statement, because it is normally delivered as a paper product, really has two sides. So on the first side, you want to put all your main information, all the information about your company, the important things like your DUNS number, your CAGE code, your NAICS codes. You want to put any certifications that you have. So be able to list those, a way to distinguish yourself from maybe somebody else. And then you can put other things on there like the services you offer, a statement about your business, current and past clients, your mission statement, these kind of things, whatever you can fit on that first page. and a little bit of a graphic to make it attractive. So you want to make this attractive. This is your sales tool, and it's very important that you have a very professional looking sales tool that you can give to the contracting officers when you get to meet them. On the back page, you can put pretty much anything. Uh, I find putting some past performance in there is important. They can see what kind of projects that you've done, the size of the projects that you've done. You might want to list some services or additional things that you do that you maybe couldn't fit on the front. If you've won some awards, that might be a good time to also put some awards on there to distinguish yourself from other contractors. So utilize that back page as just your additional marketing materials. So now that you're set up and you're talking to the government and you're registered in SAM, where do you go and find those bids? So how do we search for those bids? The way we do that is right now with beta.sam.gov. It used to be Federal Business Opportunities, often called FedBizOps or FBO.gov, and they've now transitioned to the betasam.gov site. As you can tell from the name, the beta means that it's not a completely operational system yet. I'll go a little bit over, I'll show you a little bit about what BetaSam looks like, but we did lose some features that we used to have on the FBO.gov site with the BetaSam system. They promise us they are coming, and hopefully within the next year, we'll start to see more more things that you can click on and get more information, and they'll combine more of the systems. FedConnect.net is another system that has government bids. It is not used by as many agencies, and it tends to be smaller contracts, but it is still a really good site for those that have very specific things. So something like if you supply porta potties, that might be where you might find something smaller like that, a smaller contract like that. So FedConnect can be an important site as well. In the last few years, the GSA schedules have been growing in use by the government agencies. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, you always have your state sites. And I have Nebraska's up here, but there are, a site for every state that you may need to register with. Some of them have fees and some of them don't, depending on where you want to do business and work with what state you want to be working in. So the first site, the betasam.gov, is a search engine. So you can put in information to search. You can look at awards and contracts. You can search by NAICS code or keywords. You can put in timeframes. You can put in government agencies. Lots of different ways that you can search in the system. It takes a little work with it, and you need to try it out different times to see what works, to find the solicitations that you're looking for. PTAC also can help you do that and figure out how to search on BetaSam. When you do find something that you like in there, they have a little follow sign in there that you can click on as long as you're logged into the system. If you click on that follow, then you will get updates on that solicitation if there's any changes, and that's very important if it's one that you want to bid on. You can also find descriptions of opportunities, of what that solicitation is, and the documentation that goes with that. So the bidding documents, statements of work, other information that you might need to put together your bid. FedConnect, you can also sign in and submit bids through this service. You can also search it without signing in and search the public opportunities only. There is a search engine in here where you can put in keywords or a solicitation number or other items that you can use to search. It is free, and I recommend that you go up there and explore that a little bit to see if there's anything there that you might be able to bid on and could be important to you. And then the GSA schedules. We have really found that this is where we're getting most of our bids now. We used to get them all on the other FBO.gov site, which is now BetaSam. But now we're finding most of our opportunities on the GSA schedules. And they often are requests for quotes instead of requests for proposals. I'll go over that a little bit later, but that can make a big difference in the preparation of your bid and how you put that together. I have listed here just some of the services that GSA buys, but they also buy every product you can think of. This GSA schedules is sort of like that catalog for the government agencies, where they can go in there and they can put something out there that says, this is what we're looking for, and then anyone who's in the GSA schedules can go in there and bid on that. The only way you can get into the bid site, which is ebuy.gov, is to be on a schedule. So you have to get into the schedules first. You'll probably get solicitations from other companies to help you get on those GSA schedules. I do recommend that you try to figure it out yourself first. You can hire someone to do it, but what really tends to happen is they just ask you all the questions. You still have to do all the work. You submit it to them, they package it together, and it can be very expensive for them to package it together. So if you think that you can do it yourself, you have to put together your history of pricing, the type of work that you do, and the type of people. Um, you have to put together all the information about your company. You have to back it up with taxes and other information to prove your numbers. It's a lot of paperwork, and it takes many days to put that all together, but definitely it's worth it if you can get on those GSA schedules. And then this site is a place where you can go to find out about your competition. On usaspending.gov, you can search by company name, DUNS number. You can search a government agency. If you know of a contract that's come out, you may be able to find it up here if you know the current vendor on that. And then you can see what they bid on the last time that they bid it, if it's a contract that continues every 5 years. So it can give you quite a bit of information. Also, you can take a look at the type of work that you do and see what other people are bidding. Of course, you have to know the statement of work that goes with that bid to really understand that. It's not going to be an hourly rate, most likely, but it can give you some information about your competitors and how much work they do. It's also good if you have done any work to search on your own name to see what shows up. So use this site wisely, and hopefully it'll help you out as you put together your bids. And then there's bid matching services, and I've mentioned several times about PTAC, and they're a free service, and they are very helpful in getting you on the search engines and figuring out how to get notices sent directly to you of things that fall within your NAICS code. So very important that you talk to your PTAC center and get their services. If you need a little bit more than that, there are other companies out there, and I've only listed two. There's lots of them, but Deltec, which is a pretty pricey company, a service that provides more information about your bid. So it kind of combines what USA Spending has with your bid searches, so that when you pull up a contract that you're interested in, it'll show you who currently has the contract and how much they bid on it. So it can be a very useful service, but like I said, it's a little pricey. We currently are using GovTribe, which is less pricey, but still brings me those searches that I might miss if I'm just going up and searching by myself using different search codes. And GovTribe is just a search engine. It just brings that up. It brings the documents up. It does not bring up the vendor information. But there's a couple of sites that you can go to, take a look around, and see what works for you. So we know where to go find the opportunities, and we can search those now. But what does that mean then if we find something we like? So I'm going to go over the types of solicitations that are going to be on these search sites and talk a little bit about the differences between them. So the request for quotation, request for proposal, invitation for bid, and the sources sought, or the request for information. First, let's decode the solicitation number. What does that mean? Well, that solicitation number is the number for each solicitation that the government puts on betasam.gov or FedConnect. It's an identifier, with the first 6 numbers being the buying office and who is buying the services. The next 2 numbers is the fiscal year that it was funded in. Then you have an alpha in their alpha code with the solicitation type, and I'll go over that a little bit more. And then the last four digits are just a contract identifier, a number that is given by the contracting officer when they're putting this code together. That alpha code can mean different things. So you may see an R, a request for proposal, a B or an I for a sealed bid, a J, which is reserved, doesn't necessarily mean anything, a T for an RFQ under 25,000, and a Q for an RFQ under 250,000. So that can give you a little insight to where they think this solicitation is going to fall and how formal it's going to be. So first we'll talk about the request for quotation, the RFQ. The RFQ is informational and is used by the government to obtain information and quotations. Its estimated value is under 250,000 and is considered a simplified acquisition. An RFQ may be used in circumstances where simplified acquisition procedures are not used. So it could be one or the other. And the bid package typically includes a standard Form 18. An RFQ is not as formal as an RFP, which I'll go over in a minute. The RFQ usually is between 5 to 10 pages. They want a little information about your company, a little bit of a solution of how you're going to do this, and then your quote. So it's much easier to put together. These are the ones that you see most often on the GSA schedules, is an RFQ. They're quicker, they're simpler, but they tend to be less value than an RFP, so that 250,000 or less. The RFP is a more formal proposal. It's going to be most likely a negotiated contract where there may be some communication back and forth with the contracting officer. In an RFQ, you can get some of that as well, or a lot of times they'll just award based on whatever their award criteria is. But with an RFP, you're going to get more of a negotiation. They'll also negotiate on pricing, technical requirements, and those deliverables. And so that can change throughout the process, the RFP process. You may submit that RFP and then they may come back with more questions. The bid package typically includes the standard Form 33 or 1447. And then the electronic procurement systems such as the GSA eBuy, they offer fully electronic RFQ and an RFP system. So on the GSA eBuy system, you submit directly through that system your proposal. You can also, most often, they want you to send it as well. So you may have to do both. If you have to send it, sometimes they want a paper copy, sometimes they want electronic. Of course, if you're sending a paper copy, you would have to send it by FedEx or mail, and you need to send it ahead of time, which can be a disadvantage because sometimes those amendments to the proposal can come out at the very last minute. An invitation for bid is going to be your low price bid. It's usually a sealed bid. It does not necessarily require a proposal with it or any other documentation about your company. They may want some performance or past performance information about your company. A little bit, it might be a couple pages, more like your capability statement. There will be no discussions or negotiations, and the bid package is going to speak for itself. So it's going to be lowest bid wins. The bid package typically includes the standard Form 33 or 1447 on this one as well. So you just have to look to see what they're asking for on this one. And the sources sought. The government uses the sources sought to do their market research. So they're looking for information about companies that can do the type of work that they're looking for. And this is a good opportunity for you to do some marketing to them as well. This is your chance to tell them about yourself and why you should be selected, or if you are a disadvantaged business or woman-owned, veteran-owned, this is your chance to ask them to set that aside for that type of a business. The sources sought is also used for architectural and engineering projects. They use a standard Form 330, which they call a sources sought because you don't have to provide any pricing to it, but it is almost a full proposal, and they can be very large. So if you're in the architect engineering field, know that your sources sought is going to be your type of proposal. For everyone else, they're going to ask for maybe 5 to 10 pages. They may have a list of questions they want you to answer. Sometimes it's vague and you just submit whatever information you want to submit. And it's, like I said, used as that marketing research for the contracting officers, but it's the best way to get something set aside as well. They have to have, I believe, 3 sources sought information from contractors to set aside that meet the requirements. So keep that in mind. So here are the standard forms that are most often used. There's certainly more than these, but you most likely will see these. The 1449 is the simplified acquisition. 1447 is very similar, solicitation and contract. The 26, the 33 for supplies and services, the 18 request for quotes, and the 330 for that architect engineering standard forms. And there's not anything mysterious really about these contracts. They all look about the same. This one is a 1-page. The rest of them are multi-pages. And that second page or third page might be for your place to put your pricing when you bid. But when you get this, you'll also get one of these back when you get the award. The thing that's important with this, if you do get this back after you've won award, is to check to make sure that it's got your company name on it and address, to make sure that it has the correct price and quantity on it before you sign that contract. Otherwise, you have to go through a mod process to get anything changed. And if they accidentally use the right company name but the wrong address, it can take months to fix. So make sure that you check the information on this. If you're bidding on something and you see this, it's usually within the bid package. Look for it to see if it has a set aside on it. Set aside will also be listed in the solicitation on betasam.gov. So there's different places that that will be identified, but it should also be identified on the contract. When you submit your bid, they may ask you to sign this as you submit it. So make sure you follow the directions in the bid documents to see if you need to sign this when you submit. Decoding the solicitation. Okay, so now we found something we want to bid on, and we're reading through the document. What does all that mean? So in a formal document, and I'm going to cover this because an RFQ is just, it's going to have just a couple of these things, and it's going to be very much simplified. But the formal RFP is going to have different sections that give you different information. That first section A, that's going to be your standard form. So it's going to have whatever form applies to the contract that you're bidding on. B is going to talk about the pricing and how they want you to price it. It may have an additional information or spreadsheet there that says we want you to price it this way and not just give us a lump sum. Section C is your description or specification. This is where your statement of work is going to fall. And within your document, it may be included or it may be an attachment. So make sure you look to see where that statement of work is. And that's going to describe the type of work that they want you to do. Section D is your packaging and marketing. If you're delivering something, how they want that packaged, how they want it marked. And E, how they're going to inspect it and accept it. And F, where they want that delivered and or the performance. So make sure you look through those sections. And then there's more sections. Section G is your contract administration data, administrative data. And this is the information on how you're going to bill the government if you win this contract. H is your special contract requirements. This is really important and sometimes can get hidden within the document because there's so many pages. But this is where they might talk about a site walk or a conference informational call that talks about the project. Very important to find that section H if there is one and see if there's anything special in there. I is your contract clauses, and there's going to be a lot of them. They're called FARs, Federal Acquisition Regulations, and these are your contracts requirements that you have to follow. Section J is your list of documents and attachments. It's going to list your documents here. It's not going to attach them here. It's very important when you get down to the end of your document and you go through your attachments that you match them up with Section J to make sure that you have them all. If you're missing a document there, that can be very critical to how you bid the project and how you respond to the government. Section K is your representations and certifications and other statements of the bidders. So we call it the reps and certs. And this is where it asks you, are you a small business? Are you a woman-owned business? Are you veteran-owned? Are you a disadvantaged business? And it goes through other things such as that relating to your business. It's all the same information that you have on sam.gov and that you went through and marked in there. There is a section there where you can just include the paragraph that says all of my reps and certs are in SAM.gov. So you can look for that paragraph to include instead of including this whole category, which is many pages of your, and marking the appropriate category of where you fall in small business or set aside. Section L is going to be a very important part of this document that tells you how you want to set up your bid to the government. This is going to give you those instructions that tell you to what font to have, what size paper you can use, how many pages you can have, how they want it laid out. You know, they want company information first, key personnel, and past performance. Do they want something else in there? So it's very important you read L and understand that and put together your bid according to L. M is your evaluation factors for award. It's also very important that you understand those evaluation factors because that is what they're going to look for when they are scoring your proposal. So as you set it up to section L, you want to make sure you include the evaluation factors within that and identify them. Maybe you put it in bold or underline it so that as they go through your proposal, they can easily see that you meet all the evaluation factors for this contract. So a typical RFP is going to be 40 to 60 pages long, maybe even more than that. Often they're over 100 pages. There's going to be a lot of information in there. They're going to be asking for certifications that you might have to consider. You may need to propose additional employees or subcontractors. So it takes quite a bit of time to get an RFP put together. Also look for there if they're going to have monthly report requirements and other information that you're going to have to report on and deliver. Those are deliverables and very important that you follow the deliverables that are identified. It'll also have that information for invoicing. Make sure you understand that invoicing. You may have to go into the WAWF, we call it the WAF, where you invoice and input your information for as you do your work or deliver your products. And they also might have information in there about background checks and security clearances, which is very important that you be able to address that as well. Oops. Submitting bids. So that RFP process can take several months. We've had them take as long as 12 months. You start out, you bid, there's amendments, there's changes, they delay the due date, it keeps going out. You may even submit your bid and they'll come back with clarifications that can take even months longer. So the quickest I've seen an RFP turnaround is about 3 months. I think the longest one we ever took 12 months. The proposals may be in several volumes. They may want a volume for your technical ability. They may want one for cost and pricing. They may want one for the documentations, like the standard form and the reps and certs. So make sure you understand those volumes and how they want those volumes put together. With an RFP, the low bid does not always win. Unless they specify that, it's probably going to be more of a negotiated type contract. You are competing on a national level when there's an RFP, unless it's a set aside for an SBA 8A or women-owned, veteran-owned. And if you lose, don't get discouraged. Ask for a debrief and try again. I'll talk a little bit about debriefs later on so you understand what that means. One of the things I mentioned was that federal acquisition regulations and the Code of Federal Regulations, these are your contract requirements. And it's important that you read through those in your contract and understand what they say. Oftentimes, if you're supplying a product, they're going to ask for an American-made product. And it's important to know if you can even get that product in America, and if you can't, that you identify that within your proposal. It's also going to tell you the restrictions on the contract and other things that you need to know that you may need requirements for in that contract. So there's a lot of them. It's a lot of pages. Over 20 years, I know them pretty well, but they can still add new ones or change them. And it's important that you get to know where the different ones are. So some of the ones that I use on a regular basis and go look up is Part 9, where it just talks about the qualification requirements, teaming arrangements, and conflict of interest. And it's good to go back and read through those every once in a while when you're seeing something that comes up in your contract. Part 12 is your commercial items. It's just going to talk about your off-the-shelf items that you might be purchasing for this contract and the rules and regulations surrounding that. Part 13 and 16 is the acquisition process itself. So if they come back with something, some certified letter or some consideration letter, and you don't know what that means, go back to part 13 through 16, and it should be listed in the FAR there of the process that they're using to evaluate your proposal. Part 30 and 31 is your cost accounting section. Very important that you understand the rules around how you acquire your costs for the project, how you report them, how you come up with your numbers, how you track those timesheets, and all of that is all in that part 30 to 31. My colleague, our CFO for the company, is presenting on cost accounting later in July. I highly recommend you take that training and learn more about what part 30 to 31 means and how to put together your bid to meet that requirement. Part 52 is your provisions and clauses. More information. This is your reps and certs and your small business status. If you don't understand something on your contract, you can go back to this area to read that. And part 53 talks about forms. When you have an RFP and an RFQ, you'll have a question and answer opportunity. And this is your opportunity to ask for clarification and can be very, very important. It usually has a date requirement on it, so make sure you look for that because you have to have your questions in before that date. As you ask your questions, be careful not to give away your approach or solution to the RFP because those questions will go out and be published with information on your betasam.gov. So make sure that you ask that question carefully to get the answer you want without giving anything away about your company. I see it often enough that they'll say, well, this is what we're planning to do. Is that going to be okay? Well, you've just given away the secret of how you're going to bid that project. Also, read the RFP so you don't ask questions that are answered if you had read the RFP. We often see that questions come in of, well, how many pages do we have? What is the font we have to use? It's almost always in section L. So make sure you read that carefully before you ask your questions so that it doesn't sound like you haven't done your homework. And also your Q&A also reveals information about your competitors and also the number of bidders. Although they don't tell you who submits the question, you can kind of tell by the way it's written how many people have submitted questions. And so that can be very helpful as you're putting together your solution. From the Q&A, they often will send out an amendment or a change. The Q&A even comes out as an amendment. So make sure you check all the amendments that get attached to this proposal, to this request for proposal. And if you're on betasam.gov and you've signed up for follow, these will come in as announcements to you on your email. So be sure to check to see if those amendments, when you submit your proposal, if they need to be signed and included. And also read them very carefully for those changes because they are contractual. So make sure that you read everything within those amendments because they are the changes to the original solicitation. So now that you've read through the whole thing, you're signed up, you're ready to go, you see this contract, you want to bid, ask yourself, can I win it? Not can I perform? All the ones that come out, I'm like, oh, I can find a solution for that. I can do that. But do I have enough past performance? Do I have enough experience and key personnel to actually win that from their perspective? Yes, I think I can do it, but will they think I can do it? So make sure you look at that solicitation to see if you're going to qualify for it. And oftentimes, if you've never met the customer and they've never heard about you, you may be too late. But don't be discouraged and don't give up on it. If you really do meet that criteria, go ahead and bid. They're always looking for new contractors. They're always looking for new solutions. And right now, when there's not a chance to go and meet them in person, or you may not even be able to call them, go ahead and take a chance with that solicitation. This is a nice flow chart for deciding whether or not you should bid or not bid. So looking at this from the strategy point of view, do we have a relationship? Do we have a competitive advantage? Do we understand what they're needs are. Do we have the resources to do the work? If they're all yeses, yes, by all means, bid this project. If you've got some yeses and some nos, it's a maybe, but maybe you can get some help in bidding that project, maybe a subcontractor or a partner to go in and go after that solicitation. If they all end up no, pass it by. It's time to find one that you know you can win. So now we're ready to write that proposal. Let's take a look at the RFP again. We're going to read the whole document. We're going to highlight those essential requirements in there to make sure we don't miss anything. We're going to set up that proposal according to that RFP or Section L. Make sure that you read that very, very carefully. And while you're setting it up to Section L, you're going to make sure that you write it so that you meet those requirements of Section M. Like I said, be sure you highlight or underline those requirements that you meet so that they can easily find those. And then you will add your pricing and signatures to sections A and B. Section A, of course, is that standard form, and B is the pricing, which may be a second page or an attachment. So understanding your audience here, your government audience, you want to research them like you would any other customer. You want to think of them as your customer. They definitely will be your customer if you get into government contracting. And you want to write to their needs and focus on the deliverables. Very, very important because that's what they're looking for. So as you're doing your research, take a look at what are the priorities for that agency. What are they concentrating on? What do they consider important? And who are those decision makers? If you can get to the technical people and find out a little bit more about what they're really looking for, you'll definitely have an advantage. Finding those technical people can be very difficult. When the proposal or the request for proposal comes out, they'll have some names on there for the contracting officer and the technical. But once that comes out, you really can't contact them by phone. You must do everything in writing, and then it becomes like the Q&A session, public for everyone who um, wants to bid on that project. So you have to find out ahead of time if you can. So if you know what agencies you want to work with and you know what departments you want to work with, talking to their small business specialist and finding out who you can talk to within that agency ahead of the RFP is the time to really do that research. And then you want to think like your customer. If you were that customer, if you were that agency, what would you want for a solution? So think about that as you're putting together your own solution. Is it going to meet what you would want to hire? Would you select you if you had bid on that project? So make sure that you really concentrate on finding that solution for them and not just telling them about yourself. And then if there's something that you have that you could add as a value add to the project, it's good to include that as well. And whether that's an extra freebie or whether that's going to cost more, you can still talk about that within your document. But you need to be very clear on whether that's included or not included. And also, remember when you're writing that you're not just talking about yourself, but you're talking about what you can do for them. So if you get through the whole proposal and you take a look at what they're asking for and you kind of go, so what? You can do this and you can do that, but can you really solve my problem? That's when you need to go back and make sure that you change your proposal so that you're talking about them and how you can fit into their need. And that's very important, not just to talk about yourself. So in writing your response, there's some things to think about and putting together that RFP. That proposal, you want to be in persuasive writing mode. You want to tell the audience what they want to hear, not just what you want to tell them. And that's kind of going back to just like going on and on and on about yourself. You know how that is when you're with somebody else. You want to have it, a little bit more about what they want to hear. Your proposal is also your sales tool, so make sure you use it that way. This is the way to sell your benefits, not just your features, but how they're going to benefit from hiring you. And never make an unsupported claim because it is a contract and they'll expect you to honor that. So be very careful that you don't overpromise and underdeliver. Writing tips. For me, it helps if I read the RFP backwards. And that means starting with section M, how are they going to evaluate you? and then section L, what's going to be included in that proposal and how much work is it going to be, and then working your way back through the RFP. Working your way backwards through the RFP, you may see some things that you missed going forward the first time. Going backwards, you might find that section H, which has special considerations, site walk, or a conference call. You want to make sure that you don't miss that, and it can be very hidden in there. It could be just one little simple line, not even highlighted or anything. And so reading that backwards, sometimes that'll catch your eye and you won't miss it. Also think beyond compliance. I have seen proposals go out where they say, yes, we will comply with what you are asking for. Yes, we'll comply with this that you asked for. Well, they want more than that. They want to, everyone's going to comply. I mean, that's required, but they want to know how you're going to comply. So make sure that you think beyond just stating that you're going to meet their compliance. Also consider if you failed in the past, why you have failed, and make sure you take another look through your proposal to make sure that that's not happening again. One of the best ways to win a project or a contract is to have a competitive advantage. So what is that? That competitive advantage asks the questions, why should I do business with you? And what do you offer that your competitors don't? And it needs to be quantifiable. So not just, I'm a great company and I'm a great person and you should hire me for that, but other reasons, like what sets you apart and what do you do that's different than anybody else? And you can be very fortunate if you have a very true discriminator or competitive advantage, something that's very unique. Not everybody will, but you still need to find that competitive advantage that you may have over somebody else. So saying you've been in business for 20 years, it's really not a discriminator. There's probably lots of other companies that have been in business that long as well. It's not going to make me stand out. It's still an advantage, but it may not be the competitive advantage that I want to highlight. I'll still talk about that, but there's some other things that you might need to be quantifiable, like if you're on time 90% of the time, or other things that you can quantify that maybe other companies can't. These would be things you'd want to talk about. So all good companies have these strengths. We're all good at customer service. We all guarantee quality. We have a great reputation. You're going to get great results. Our employees are the best ever. We're very consistent. We're innovative, but not saying how we're innovative. And you can trust us. These are not your competitive advantages. So make sure you think beyond that and not just put those verbiage in there that everybody else is using. Make sure you set yourself apart. Cost proposals. So now that we've done the technical proposal, we've done it according to the section L, we've talked about section M, we've talked about our company, our people, our past performance. We're now going to talk a little bit about that cost proposal document, which is usually a separate document as they like to evaluate cost separate from technical. So the type of awards that you might see in a solicitation would be a multiple award contract. These are great contracts because they're going to award it to multiple companies. So you have a better chance of winning. So a lot of times they'll say, we're going to award to 5 companies. And when they award something like that, they like to set them aside, some of them aside. So it may be one large company, one small company, small business, maybe a woman-owned, an 8A, or a service disabled. So you have a much, much higher chance of winning a seat in that multiple award contract. Once you're in a multiple award contract, then they're probably going to put out work orders that for different types of work that you bid on against just those people that are on your contract. So that means you only got 5 bidders or so, 3 or 5 bidders bidding against you versus everybody in the US. So it's a great contract to be able to get one of those. A blanket purchase order can work somewhat the same way. Sometimes they award just to one contractor, sometimes it'll be multiple. Blanket purchase order, they use a BPA order instead of a work order. They call it a purchase order, but it's similar. They're going to set aside a little bit of work. If you're the sole person on a BPA, they're going to give it to you in pieces. So different agencies that are on that blanket purchase order can order from you. And so you may get it from different departments for the same type of work. An IDIQ can also be a multiple award or a single award. And IDIQ is also by work order. It's an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. So they'll give you work as it comes up as a work order. And so you'll bid on that work or you'll price that work. If you're a single awardee, you price it out and give it to them. You win every time, of course. There's no one bidding against you. So those are highly desirable. And then there's a cost plus fee. These are a lot of times used for environmental type work where they're not really sure what the cost is going to be. So they ask for some cost variables like hourly rates and some other cost that you might have to bid on, but you don't know how much you're going to have. And then based on how much it costs to finish that work, then you get a guaranteed fee. On an award basis, these are some, there may be more than these, but best value, these are the ones most likely you'll see. Best value is they're going to award based on your credentials. We always like that because we think we're the best. So best value is definitely the ones that we look for. They may have a lowest price technically acceptable. This sounds easy where they just like you're either pass or fail on your proposal and then the lowest price wins. But in a technically acceptable, you have to meet each little criteria within there. And so it's very precise to be able to be the pass or fail on the technically acceptable. And then it goes to low price. So those can be a little tricky in that. So getting that proposal right is going to be critical. They can be set asides where they set aside for a woman-owned, 8A, service disabled. Those, of course, are the best because you negotiate directly with the agency and you don't even have to necessarily pre-bid it. They call you up, they say, hey, we'd like to hire your company. Can you give us a quote? You don't even have to write the proposal. So those can be very nice to have. And of course, there's always low bid. I don't have that on there, but you'll see that with construction contracts, they'll go low bid, lowest bid wins. Some considerations when you're putting together your cost, it needs to be reasonable. So it can't be overly priced or overly heavy. Even if you're negotiating a contract, you want to make sure that you stay reasonable. If it becomes unreasonable and your price, even if it's a set aside in there and you're an 8A and they're negotiating with you and they know that your price is just based too high, they will stop negotiations with you. So make sure you have it reasonable, that it's similar to what you would be charging in the public sector and not significantly more than that. Your company's financial records also have to support the prices that you are quoting. So if they come back and you get audited, you want to make sure that you can support that overhead rate that you have in there or the wages that you are paying. So make sure that you don't overinflate a price and not be able to back that up. In government contracting, they have wage rates. And for services, it's called the Service Contract Act or the SCA. And in construction, it's called the Davis-Bacon wages. And they have set wage limits. You can't go lower than what's listed in these. If you go up and do a search on Google into the GSA, you can find these rates. And they're by state and by county. So you have to know what county you're going to be working in to get the right rate. You also have to be able to prove that you did some research on your materials, that you didn't just source it from one place, but that you did some searching to make sure that you got the best price for the government. So make sure that you go out and get a couple bids if you can, and keep that in your files so that if they come back and audit, you can prove that you did your due diligence there. At the same time, with all of this, you have to be competitive in pricing, especially if it's low bid. So they're going to tell you how much you have to pay your employees. They're going to tell you the type of materials that you have to buy, and you still have to be that low bid to win on most cases. So pricing tips, think like your customer. Does your pricing make sense? Considering the risk on the project, is your pricing reasonable? Are your indirect rates too high to be competitive? Just because your rate is high doesn't mean that that's really what you're going to bid. You may need to bid lower and get more volume to get a lower indirect rate. And so your current rate, if you don't have a lot of revenue, could be too high to be competitive. So think about that. Just because you've calculated your indirect rate doesn't mean you have to use that. You can use something lower than that. And it may depend on the risk and the competition on that solicitation. And oftentimes low bid is not enough. Most of the time, you also have to prove that you have the past performance, you have the credentials, you have the key employees to win that as well. So remember that the low bid is not always going to be the winner unless it's specified as such. Callbacks. If they call you back for any reason to ask for clarification, I always take this as a good sign. It means they're considering you. You haven't been thrown out of the evaluation process. So those callbacks they may give you a phone call and ask for clarification on your technical cost. It may come as a letter, um, a more formal letter saying, we're asking you to clarify these items. Um, they may want more information, like you didn't give enough information or you missed some information. They can do that as well. They may call you back and ask for an interview. You've got a key person that's going to be on their job site. They want to know a little bit more about them and have that interview with them. And they may also come back and ask for your best and final offer. So this is your chance to adjust your pricing and give them your best pricing offer. Most oftentimes, you want to lower your price, but not always. I mean, it depends on how you priced it. But if they're asking for best and final, then that means they're looking for that one reason to award to you or someone else, and lowering it just a little bit may give you that advantage. If you don't win, you have 3 days after you receive notice that you did not win to ask for a debrief. Debriefs can be very helpful in learning why they picked somebody else over you. Sometimes you can choose a verbal over a written debrief. Most of the time now I see them as written. They'll just give you the written response of why you did not win. If it is verbal, you want to make sure that when you're asking questions and talking with them, that you don't get contentious, but you can ask for clarification. It's going to sting a little bit. They're going to tell you that you're not as good as you thought you were, and it can hurt a little bit. So you have to be careful not to feel too wounded on that and get a little hostile with them. You want to make sure that you stay very kind and thank them for the debrief. It is a unique thing that you can get feedback on why you didn't win. And if you do win, you may also ask for a debrief. Well, why did we win? Why did you pick us over somebody else? And that's a good way to find out what they saw in your proposal and what you presented that got you the job, that got you that contract. So incorporating those lessons learned. So every proposal is an opportunity to improve. Every time you write one, you get a little bit better at it. Also, you might want to team with other contractors to improve your position with that solicitation. So think about that as well. There may be somebody there that has better credentials than you that can be a subcontractor to you. You may ask your contracting officers what makes a good proposal. Each agency has different requirements and things they look for. So you can ask any agency that you're talking with, what is it they're really looking for? What stands out to them? And what works with one time with one customer may not work again with the next customer. And that's what I mean by different agencies have different ideas of what makes a good proposal. So make sure you check with each agency that you're bidding with. Some strategies. Let's think about, okay, we're putting this to bid, proposal to bid. What are some last things that we might want to think about to improve our chances to win? One of the ways you might want to improve your winning chances is, do you know how many bids you need to submit to get the revenue that you're looking for? What is your win ratio? So if you have a sales plan, and you should develop a sales plan, how much revenue do you want to have within your company? For example, say 500,000. So if each bid that you're bidding on is 500,000 and you have a 10% win ratio, you would need to bid about $5 million worth of bids. So think about that. If each bid is only 50,000, then you're going to need to bid 100 proposals. So think about that. Most of the bids are not going to be all the same price. They're going to be all over the place. But you can see the higher bids, if you qualify, can get you there faster than a lot of small ones. Most of the time, though, they're smaller. They're under 250,000. And those are the ones that are going to be the easier ones to win. The other way to improve your winning ratio is to narrow your focus and concentrate on that past performance. Become really good at what you do in a certain area. And then you have that past performance they're looking for. A lot of times they're going to want 3 to 5 past performance references. And sometimes they'll say that they need to have those completed, that you can't put in those that you're currently working on. So you need to develop that past performance history that you can use in your proposals. Markups are usually lower with government contracting because of the volume. Because the bids are normally higher, you want to make sure that you are not bidding at the same rate for a $5,000 proposal as you would for a $500,000 proposal. And if you don't have any experience, there's a way that you can somewhat buy your experience by being the lowest bidder. And I did this early on when I wanted to figure out how to work with the Air Force. And there were some very small contracts coming out for education advisor where we had to provide someone or a test proctor, where they just needed to sit and make sure that people didn't cheat on their tests and monitor them. Very simple job. And I bid on that at nearly cost just so I could get that past performance. And getting that past performance with the Air Force then helped me get larger contracts and contracts that had more people on them where I could, get more revenue and more profit. So know your experience requirements. If previous contracts with federal agencies is experience that they're most likely going to want, however, your state experience or local experience is important as well. High past performance ratings on your past projects, they will check your references. So make sure that you're putting your projects in there that you have the best reputation on. Also within the government, they have a CPARS rating system that they'll perform after you've finished a contract. In most cases, not all of them do it, but if you can get a CPARS performance review, that can very well help you as well as you bid on more projects. You want to bid on something that's comparable in project size. So you kind of have to step it up. You can't go from a $5,000 bunch of projects and then bid on a $5 million project. That's a pretty big jump. They may not think that you have the experience to handle that. Also, comparable project duration. We often see this as well. Have you worked on projects that are 1 year, 2 year, 5 year? And do you have the qualified staff to do the work? Do you have the qualified staff in-house and the qualified staff that you put on the project? So these are the things that they'll be looking for. So make sure you get this ahead of time and get set up for these things. And explore different options. You may want to go into a teaming arrangement, a joint venture, subcontract, or find a mentor. A teaming arrangement involves 2 or more companies coming together to bid on a contract. Oftentimes in the teaming arrangement, you don't mark each other up, and so you're coming together as a team because you don't meet all the requirements by yourself. And so that teaming partner comes in as an equal partner. If it's a set aside, you need to make sure that you still meet the requirements of that set aside. So if they're asking for a small business, you have to be 51% combined as a small business. If it's a set aside for a woman-owned or veteran-owned, 51% needs to be set aside for that company that meets that requirement. A joint venture is more formal. This is approved by the SBA and must meet their requirements. And it's most often with an SBA 8A certified company, a service disabled company, certified company. Sometimes you can do it with a woman-owned company depending on what the requirements are. But for the 8A and service disabled veteran-owned, they are more formal business arrangement that you can do to bid on a project. So what you do is the 2 companies come together and form a new company with a joint name. And then they get all the credentials that they're looking for, like the 8A or the service disabled. And so with that joint venture, then you can go after those projects. You are limited to usually 3 projects within a joint venture, but you can have multiple joint ventures. So that's one way to get into the 8A set aside is if you can partner with an 8A company. Not sure you're ready to work directly with the government? Well, then find a prime contractor that you can subcontract to and start getting that experience. That's the best way to step into it slowly. And then also you might be able to find a mentor that will help you understand how to do business with the government. There are formal mentor protege programs out there. They're a little bit more difficult to get into and they're very specific. But they are out there, and you can look for those, get more information under the SBA website. So the best win strategy developed is knowing what the customer wants and needs and then meeting them. That's the best way to win any kind of contract, is making sure that you meet their wants and needs, and of course at the best price. So you really, very often you will hear the government say, or the customer, that the winning contractor really understood us and what we needed, and that does make all the difference. So I just want to summarize. Make sure that you get registered with sam.gov, that you get all those DUNS numbers, cage codes, NAICS codes, and get registered up there to be able to do work. Then find those bids that match your experience. Go up on betasam.gov, look around, search by NAICS code, see what's out there, see what you can bid. You may want to start small and work your way to the larger projects. And remember that proposals are persuasive documents like a resume. Make sure that you're checking your spelling, that your verbiage is correct grammar, making sure that it's pleasing to the eye, that you've got some graphics in there and you have it laid out well. Know your competitive advantage. Know what sets you apart, and make sure you state that in your proposal. And that can make a difference in finding what it is that takes to let you win the proposal versus somebody else. And keep your price reasonable. Even though you may be the best company out there, if your price isn't reasonable, they may not decide to take your proposal. So make sure that you're being reasonable with your price, and remember that price according to volume. So if it's a larger volume contract, make sure you reduce that overhead to make sure that it's reasonable. And then make sure you research your customer and find their wants and needs. These are going to be the way that you really win in making sure that you meet what they're looking for. So good luck with finding those solicitations and bidding and getting out there in the government contracting world. The nice thing about the government is they're very reliable in paying, so that you know that you're going to get paid every 30 days. Sometimes on construction projects, you can get paid every 15 days. It's really nice to have a very stable, steady income from a project. A lot of the projects are long term. Those 5-year contracts are wonderful in creating stability within your company and creating that backlog of projects that you've got going. So at this time, I would take any questions if anyone has any questions.
Hi, Sandy. Thank you very much. I do have one question right now from Shanna. For GSA schedules, do they ever include services such as landscaping and snow removal, etc.?
Absolutely. You want to get on the professional services contract, and there's a code for that, and they have codes for all the different engineering, but definitely landscape architecture is in there, and landscaping. If it's just landscaping and not landscape architecture, construction is in there as well, services. So make sure you take a look at those GSA schedules and find the right one that fits your company.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions right now. Let's give people a few moments to type in their questions if they have any.
Yeah, they can
Okay,
ask
well
anything
that,
they want. Did you have another one?
yeah,
Okay.
no, looks like that is it. You did such a thorough job. There are no questions.
Okay. Well, I do wish everyone good luck in bidding, and hopefully you learned a thing or two. And if you have any questions, definitely contact Catherine and the PTAC office and get some help from them.
Yes, thank you. And as Sandy mentioned in her presentation, we have Project Solutions back for another webinar at the end of July on, accounting and government contracting pricing. So check out our events page for that information. And thank you, Sandy, so much.
Thank you, Catherine.
Have a good day.
You too.